Top 100 players in the world, folks. This was the mission that Rugby Pass apparently set themselves at the end of 2021. A list of 100 players to be the 100 best players in the world. Pretty brave to go out and put a list out there like that, because you open yourselves up to all kinds of criticism when you rank players. That's just one of those things. But yeah, we'll have a quick look at how they did it, and we're not going to go through every single name because there's 100 of them, but we'll look at some of the guys who are maybe omitted, some of the guys who are too high, too low, and what does this top 100's best team look like? You guys can let me know your thoughts on how right or wrong they got it. Now, how did these guys do it? They came from the rugby site, Rugby Pass. They got 5 members of their editorial team, apparently a split between Northern and Southern Hemisphere reporters, journalists, and yeah, they each ranked their top 100 players in the world. They combined those 5 lists of the top 100 together to make an averaged out list, which is the combined one that they've come out with, which is the one we're going to go over. How do they use the criteria for this? They said it's primarily based on test matches in 2021, which is kind of surprising because some of the guys on the list played very few tests, but they did allow secondary factors of performances in previous years. Also, the player's influence on their team, which could be you're a really good player, but you play for a rubbish team, so you kind of get a few bonus points, and their performances in domestic games. So, yeah, I'll kind of scroll the list up, and you guys can have a look. As I scroll my way through this side, there's a few names that kind of stick out to me. Number 96, Lut Diacha. I find it hard to believe he's only the 96th best player in the world. For mine, he's one of the better locks in the world, so the fact that he's not even top 50 is a wee bit surprising to me, although he has had quite an extended injury layoff. Hugo Keenan from Ireland is only there at number 83. Despite the fact that in 2021, in test matches, he played virtually every minute for Ireland and looked very, very comfortable at the back, especially when you consider some of the other fullbacks who maybe didn't play as long or maybe as consistently are ranked above him. So I thought he was maybe a little bit hard done by. Julian Montoya from Argentina is in at 72. There's only 2 Argentinians on the list, and he's not even the top one. He's behind Matera, who's like 3 spots above him. I find that very hard to believe because I watched every Pumas game this year, and Montoya was clearly the most influential player on the team. For mine, captain, most tackles, most turnovers. He was just bloody everywhere. I would certainly probably have him in my top kind of 23 players in the world, man, based on 2021 test matches and his performances for the Tigers in the Premiership as well. Fiku only made number 67 is a little bit surprising. He's one of the, he maybe suffers from the fact that he chops and changes positions a lot. I've talked about that before, but he's certainly one of the best players in the world and certainly better than 67. Kitsov is only 60. I would consider him possibly the best loose head prop in the world, so certainly better than number 60. Inyakane likewise is only 57. He plays both sides of the scrum. Henshaw is only 55. Porter is only 51. So a lot of these guys I would potentially rank a wee bit higher. Will Skelton is ranked 47 and like one of the, is it like top 4 locks in the world? Because locks didn't get much love in this list, to be honest. Based on, I mean, it's a limited sample size from what I've seen Will Skelton in 2021 because I don't watch much top 14. But for Australia, off the bench, I don't know, man. Seems a wee bit high. I know Freddie Stewart has come along leaps and bounds, but 27 seems a wee bit high. I know he's like phenomenal under the high ball and looked really good for the Tigers as well. But the fact that he's 27 and Hugo Keenan's 83, just didn't quite compute with me. But I mean, he is, like, sometimes when players just burst onto the scene, you haven't had trouble to kind of see everything. You've just seen that kind of initial bit of shine. It's sometimes keeping that up for an extended period, which can be tough. I mean, Peter Steph Dutour's there in 84. Charles Olivon's there in 43. Colby's there in 32. Those guys didn't play a heck of a lot of game time this year. They spent much of the year injured. Intermark's there at 7, even though when he played 12 for France, I don't think he looked kind of that hot. He certainly looked good in that last game against the All Blacks when he played at 10. But, yeah, that's just, I mean, I could pick up a list and make 100 guys and then look at it in a year's time and ask myself what the hell I was thinking. So, I mean, it's 100 guys. Each one in their own right's a pretty bloody good rugby player. Marchand is only 77. Yeah, you could look at this and wonder all kinds of things. Semi Radradra is 34. Didn't play any tests in 2021 and is the 34th best player in the world. Seems a bit high for mine. I think there's other guys who played for Fiji this year who actually, put in some good shifts. But yeah, Radradra's 34. Previous years mainly spent a fair bit of the time out as well for his club Bristol. So that's their list. Obviously, the top 10 guys. Will Jordan at number 10. He was nominated and won the Breakthrough Player of the Year. Itoje's at 9. Some people don't like him, but he's a bloody good lock. Lucanio Arms at 8. Definitely one of the best midfielders, if not the best midfielder in 2021. Lucanio Arm. And Tamak, like I mentioned, at 7. I'm not sure he was the top 10 best players in 2021. Spent the start of the year injured, played okay at 12. I mean, domestically really good with Toulouse, and then end of the year, phenomenal game against the All Blacks, so maybe I can live with that one. Savi is there at 6. He's genuinely been quite outstanding for New Zealand. Hooper's there at 5. Genuinely been pretty outstanding for Australia. Tyke Furlong's at 4. I'd love to see the props get some love. He's around the park and scrummaging, just one of the best players in the world. Khaleesi's there at 3. Man, they seem to love open sides because, yeah, he was bloody good as well. You could argue him and Hooper could be run the other way, but I'm not going to argue that. Etzebeth's there at 2. Certainly one of the best years we've seen him play. He was, barring some bad handling stats in the Rugby Championship, he was pretty good. And Dupont's number 1. Maybe that's kind of no surprise, seeing as he got World Player of the Year. He's probably most people's first pick for number 9. Who didn't get picked? Some of the guys that I thought might have gotten picked. Props. I mean, Joe Marler, apart from Kitsoff, is one of the better loose heads in the world, isn't he? I know he's not everybody's cup of tea. And, his kind of ins and outs of the England squad maybe doesn't help, but he's genuinely a very good player. And Franz Malherbe, for some reason, didn't make the top 100, even though he is arguably the best scrummaging prop in the world. He played more time for the Springboks than Koch and then Inyekani at tight head anyway, so the fact that he's not in the top 100 I find a bit bizarre. Kazuki Himeno didn't get that much game time for Japan, but he's certainly one of the better loose forwards in the world. Had a cracking year for Super Rugby, and then in the limited games he did play for Japan this year, he certainly stuck out a fair bit. George Ford, I know he's not getting any love from Eddie Jones at the moment, but if you've seen him playing for Leicester in the Premiership, his team was unbeaten until like a week ago, so a couple of weeks ago. So yeah, he's been a proper phenomenon. Josh Adams from Wales, I'm going to say from France, doesn't get any love in this list for some reason. Maybe because of the drama with the birth of his child on the Lions tour. Saw him fall out of favour? I'm not sure. But, yeah, there's a few guys. You rattle some more off because those are just the ones that I wrote down off the top of my head. Now, looking at this list of the top 100 players in the world, let's pick out where they fit into a top 15 in the world. So Dupont starts at 9 because he was the number 1 ranked player in the world. Etzebeth's a tight head lock because he was there. Your front row is going to be Wyn Jones, Kelleher from Ireland, and Furlong. So 2 Irishmen in the front row and a Welshman. Interestingly, no Springboks make the front row in terms of the first choices. Like Kelleher was number 19, Marks was 23 for hooker. Furlong was number 4, Tupou from the Wallabies was 11, and like I mentioned, Kitsoff was only number 60 in terms of loose head props, which I find bizarre. Locks, it's going to be Etzebeth, like I mentioned, partnered with Itoje. Those guys were the only 2 locks in the top 10. I think Alan Wyn Jones was like 44th. So not ranked all that highly. Your back row is going to be Caelan Doris from Ireland, Sia Khaleesi, and then Adi Savia. So that's 6, 7, and 8. that's pretty tidy. That'd be a pretty mean back row, to be fair. Caelan Doris with his bloody skill set. Savia's everywhere, and Khaleesi smashing into rucks and whatnot. I mean, Tyke Byrne was like down at 49, which was a bit tough. Hooper doesn't make it in the starting side because he's behind Khaleesi. Hamish Watson's at like 24. Old Dreet's at 15, so he doesn't make it. Vermeulen's at 16, so he doesn't make it. Conan's at 20, so he doesn't make it. So, yeah, all French 9-10 combo with Dupont and Intermark. If you're playing Intermark at 7. Russell's at 12. Sexton's at 14. Cooper's at 17. Barrett's at 21. Marcus Smith at 22. There's a lot of 10s ranked high, but none of them quite as high as Intermark. Your midfield would be Karevi and Karevi didn't play that many games either, but he still beats out De Allende, who's down at 30, so 10 spots below Karevi. Was above the likes of Rico Ioane, Semi Radradra. Left wing, right wing, Mapimpi and Jordan. That'd be pretty nice, pretty pacey winging duo, but neither of those guys are kind of big units. They're more pace and agility guys. Peno was down at 31. Colby made it at 32, as I said, despite not playing that many games this year. Hogg is your fullback at 13. He beats out Geordie Barrett at 18 and Freddie Stewart at 27. So, yeah, like I mentioned, it's an interesting kind of mix. The majority of this top 100 is South Africans, a fifth, 20 South Africans. There's 16 Irishmen, 14 Frenchmen, 13 Kiwis, 11 Aussies and English, 7 from Wales, 5 from Scotland, 2 from Argentina and 1 from Fiji. So Japan, Georgia, Italy, these guys don't get a look in. How can you make a side from outside this top 100? Please give this a go as well. I've had a quick attempt. I could make a front row of Mala from England, as I said, one of the best loose heads in the world. Taukei'aho, who's a block-busting, ball-carrying hooker who just came onto the scene last year for New Zealand. And then Franz Malherbe, as I mentioned, one of the best kind of scrummaging tight heads in the world. I think that's a pretty tidy front row. I reckon Malherbe could give Wyn Jones a bit of trouble. But then Furlong or Mala would also be a pretty interesting matchup. I could put Petty and Gray. That's Johnny Gray in the second row. Petty for Argentina, they're in a bad year, so he doesn't get much of a look in. But in terms of guys good in the air, there's not many better than Guido Petty. And Johnny Gray, millions and millions and millions of tackles every day. Just doesn't miss tackles. So if you want a tackling machine in your second row, you can chuck him in. You could put Kremer, if he can keep his discipline, on the blind side, because he's a big unit of a man, gives you another line-out option. You could put Tom Curry, who doesn't make the top 100, at 7, or Tipperick, it doesn't really matter. And then you can put Jimeno at 8. You could put Marcel Coetzee at 8. There's Billy Vunipola. You could put loads of guys at 8, but I've gone with Jimeno to get a Japanese fella in there. 9, I like John Cooney from Ulster in Ireland. He's not got a look in Ireland in recent times, but I rate him. I reckon he's a guy who didn't quite get a fair crack at the 9 jersey. 10, man, you could go George Ford, you go Johan Klussen, you could go Paolo Garbisi. If he was from a different country, he'd probably be on the board, to be honest. Garbisi's a real live wire. Jack Carty from Ireland earned his way back into the Ireland squad with his performances. You could put Andre Esterhuizen at 12. He hasn't played any tests, but neither did Radradra, so why not, man? Esterhuizen, in terms of his influence on his domestic team, I think has had a bigger influence than Radradra in 2021. You could put Chris Harris at 13. You could put Vakatawa at 13 from France. You could put Slade from England. There's like loads of guys you could chuck in at 13. And then outside backs, you could put Josh Adams, Joshua Tuisova, and Brice Dulon. Like, happy days, man. That's a pretty bloody good team, and that's outside the top 100 players in the world. So, yeah, happy days. Anyway, like I said, I think the top 100 list is basically just a talking point. You can take it with a grain of salt, which is probably what I would say is best. There's certainly guys you could argue to get a spot in there. You could argue Brodie Retallick wasn't one of the best locks in the world this year. You know, you could argue that Geordie Barrett should be higher than he is, even though he's pretty high. You could argue till the cows come home. But anyway, you guys let me know what you reckon. Who would you have? Can you make a team outside of that top 100 guys? Or who else should be kind of higher or lower in that team? Is kind of what I'm curious about. Who's not in that top 100 that should be in there? But yeah, you guys let me know your thoughts. If you want British and Irish Lions gear, they're still flogging it off. Link in the description. They're trying to sell it, I guess, because the Lions tour is well done and dusted now. So pick up the remnants if you can get it cheap. Otherwise, you guys take care, and I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.